In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to create a tropical background using one stencil, but doing 3 different techniques with it. Let's get started. So I am using a prompt from my 100 Pick a Prompt pack that's available at Ninny's Napkins. Actually, right now, Ninny's has a challenge going on, and she picked the 2 prompts, Tropical and Explore. Now, when you buy my prompt pack at Ninny's Napkins, you get the prompt pack and a user guide that shows you how to create this art journal, this for your prompts, and how to do some brainstorming. I guide you through the process. I've picked this prompt and done a this or that. I chose to do the Japanese prompt, not the tropical one, which means I'm free to do that now. But since that page is taken in my Playing with Prompts book, I'm going to do this in my other art journal. So here I've done some brainstorming around the theme tropical, the prompt card. So then I looked at that and I pulled items in my stash. I could go with tropical fish. I have this leafy vine stencil from the Crafter's Workshop. All my stencils are from the Crafter's Workshop that you can get at Ninny's Napkins or TCW Shopify store. This one, tropical fronds. Hibiscus, that could make for a tropical themed page. Now the napkins can come from Ninny's Napkins. She also carries many of the TCW stencils and will bring in some when asked. I love this hibiscus. I could use that, maybe with that other stencil. I have some more napkins with fronds. And this napkin, oh, it is so luscious. It's one of the newest ones that I just got from Ninny's. Look at this background. That could be an instant background. This one's called Jungle Leaves, and it's still available at Ninny's Napkins. This one was one that I've gotten in a previous purchase from Ninny's Napkins. It's no longer available, but there are some. Let's go back to stencils. This one's called Banana Leaves. I love botanical stencils. They are so usable. This one came in my latest thing from TCW, Abstract Leaves. I love the movement. And again, I love these botanicals. I find I use them so much on so many backgrounds. So I'm going to use this one called Abstract Leaves. And it's one of the newest from TCW, as I said. And I'm going to use a big part of it. It is going to be my background, and I'm going to use this napkin. Now, I've already cut out some of the focal images because I'm not going to use it in the format that the napkin has in. We can pick and choose what parts, and the best way of doing that is to release the focal image from the napkin shape, and then you can manipulate it and get an idea of how you want it to go together. So let's prepare this page. I've taped up the top, and then I put a coat of white gesso on it. While that's drying, I am going to prepare the napkin. And I do that by pulling off the excess layers of the napkin. Now, I've already pulled off one layer of this when I previously used this napkin, so there was only one layer to pull off. Now, I'm going to glue this down with fluid matte medium onto a piece of scrap copy paper, just copy paper, and then I'm putting a coat of the fluid matte medium on top to seal it. That's really important. You need to put the matte medium on top because we are going to overpaint or shade later on, and I don't want it to wick and look ugly. This seals the napkin from the top. So this is a really important step. And the reason I'm putting it on copy paper and not just gluing this onto the background is because I'm going to colorize and do some stenciling on the background, and it's going to be a dark green color, and I don't want to distort these beautiful colors in this napkin. These bright oranges and reds are just so beautiful. So once that's dry, I am fussy cutting it out. And no, I'm not going to bore you by making you watch me do all the cutting, but I'm cutting off all the excess background and getting my focal images all prepared. Now I can play with them, put the stencil back there, and get a better idea of how it's going to look. I've separated the bird from the front, from the flowers, and that way I can even further change the composition. I can put it here, I can put it there, and I can't tell you how much time I spent moving it one way, moving it another, taking pictures, trying to decide exactly where I want it to go. But at this stage, I'm quite happy with what I've got going on. I'm going to add the branch here. Okay, I can put the flower down here. The flowers kind of frame the page. So I am going to colorize the background. Now I am going to prepare the background using white gesso, Hooker's green, and Naples yellow. I think I grabbed bright green as well as I tweak the colors. And I'm just going to put my base color down, and I'm mixing these paints wet on wet. We're right on a makeup sponge. The gesso that I previously put there helps me blend those colors. I want this to look mottled, and some places darker and some places lighter, some with more yellow, some darker green. Now, what I'm putting down here is going to be the color, the veins of the leaves of that stencil. So wherever there's stencil, the plastic is going to stay this base color. Now, look at all that mottleness. And some people might look at this and say, okay, Karen, that looks like a real hot mess. I want that texture. That's mixed media. Art journaling is all about texture and pattern and layers. And here we have texture and pattern, and this is just the first layer. I want it to be jungle. I don't want just one flat green, one color green. I want variety. And that's something that I'm going to be building in a variety of ways. And I do dry in between the layers. I just don't put that on video because, well, who wants to watch paint dry? So as the first layer goes, fairly interesting. There's movement and pattern. So I put that back on, organize it. Now we can see how the stencil is going to go. Now I've taped down the stencil on the sides and the top because I'm going to, here's the first technique. I'm just putting stenciling paint through the stencil. So the open spaces are now going to be a darker green. The spaces in between and the veins of the leaves are going to be a lighter color. And as I go, you're going to notice me responding to what's happening, and I'm going to be tweaking it as I go. And as I get an idea more and more what I want this to look like. Here I'm just adding a little bit of green, making it a little bit darker, and you're going to see that I'm going to darken that up even more when I peek and I see how it looks. Now at the top, I've taped that 12 by 12 stencil to the top of my page so that when I lift it up, you're going to see it's kind of like a door. It's just going to keep it there, which means I can keep lifting and moving it up and down without moving the stencil. So here's technique number 2. I am going to stamp through the stencil. This is a Songs of the Sea texture stamp from Stamperia, and I love this one. I've used this so much, it looks great on any kind of background, adds a nice smaller scale stamped image. And when you have a stencil that has big open areas, you've got to try stamping through a stencil. Sneak peek, I'm liking how it's looking. I put the stencil back down. Here I'm using a script stamp and stamping a different pattern on other parts of the stencil. Again, I'm lifting it up, peeking, and seeing what I like, adding more if I think it needs more. I'm not seeing too much difference here. So I'm grabbing the makeup sponge and I'm going to darken. I'm putting more green on the leaves part because I just want to see more contrast. That's what it's telling me, or that's what I'm thinking as I'm going along. Oh, and I like that. See, we have the lighter background that I did the base coat, and now we have this darker, richer, more tropical, lush green. Yum. I love the movement of this stencil, and I think this stencil can be used in so many ways. And I look forward to using it again and again. So I've lifted up the stencil, and now I've put my focal images on. I'm happy, but I'm noticing that there's that blue on that bird, those birds. So I want to introduce a little bit of blue to my background. And so I grabbed um, phthalo green, which is a blue green, and I'm adding that to some parts of it just to introduce that blue that's on that bird into my background and just add another tone of blue green. And then I grab, I believe it's cobalt blue, could be ultramarine blue, just to add even more blue. It wasn't blue enough using the phthalo green, and so I grabbed that. And this is closer match, liking it. Those flowers being on opposite sides, the orange and red is opposite the blue green. So, lots of energy coming off of this. I wanted to introduce some of the red of the flowers to my background. So I take some cadmium red and I'm mixing it with water here. And I'm going to splatter. Now I have to tell you, when I start to splatter here, I did not grab my fan brush, which was a mistake. Because as I'm splattering, I'm noticing that not a lot of splatter is hitting my background. But OMG, did I splatter my entire studio. I had splatter on my phone, which is taping this video. I have splatter on my floor. I have splatter on my chair, on my plastic bins. I had so much red splatter in my in my studio. I'm not sure what I was doing. So next time, grab the right brush when you're splattering. It did add that little bit of red into the background, so it did do what I wanted it to do. But OMG, I had a cleanup to do. Now I wanted to add a little bit more interest, and I like this corner. This is kind of different. It's not leaves, and I thought, oh, I'm gonna make that the sky. So I grabbed two stencil butters, fern green and ocean blue. And I'm putting some fern green on my glass palette here, and then some ocean blue. And then I'm going to use for the first time my butter spreader from TCW. It is like a giant palette knife. And what you do is you put the colors on the table, and then you put it on the palette knife on the spreader, and then move it across your stencil. Now, this is kind of user area. I'm figuring it out as I go. It works much better if I go this way, and I needed a little more stencil butter. This is the first time I'm using it, and of course I do it online in a video. But you put that on there and then spread it. And it was so easy, and you got this nice level amount. So when you're stenciling a larger area, I think this butter spreader really is a good tool to have. And also that I wanted to play up that blue on the birds. So this is going to me, represent the blue sky. And then, of course, I had some excess. So I grabbed my composition book that I put unused paint in, and I'm just pushing it through the stencil. This gives me another time to play with the butter spreader. And I really got the hang of it here. So it's all a matter of how you hold it, but you give it a couple tries and it's very quick and easy. You'll figure out exactly what angle you need to put it in and that. But look at those colors. So this is so now I'm just more able to decide exactly how I want to set up the composition. So I'm cutting off some of these flowers and they'll just go in my stash. Anything I don't use on here, I'm going to reuse on another project. It just goes in the bin. And I might find it that little one that I just cut off could end up on an ATC or something. But here I'm just shaping it because remember, the napkins, the stencils don't have to be used exactly as they are. Pick and choose what part of it you want. Mix and match. So again, I'm playing with that composition. I mean, I spent a long time. Now this page it was over an hour of actual creative time. Probably even longer when you add think time. Now I'm gluing everything down using matte gel medium. They're a little thicker, so I prefer gel medium. And gel medium, like the fluid matte medium, it's not an instant stick. It takes a little while for it to grip, so you got to make sure that it's sticking. And then I'm going to put the birds kind of high and low. And then I grabbed some sentiments, a sentiment for it. And I said, let creativity take flight. And that's what I wish for all of you. Just let your creativity soar. Try something new, experiment, challenge yourself. Don't hold yourself back. And this sentiment comes from my Winged Wonder sentiment pack, which is available. It's a digital download at Ninny's Napkins. I have over 10 different sentiment packs that are available for purchase. And they can be resized for any type or size of project. I'm loving how that stencil butter is shimmery in that top corner. It just adds another element to it. And so that was the third technique with stencils, putting modeling paste or stencil butter through a stencil. So we put paint through the stencil, just regular stenciling. We stamp through the stencil and we put modeling paste. Now I grabbed this stamp again and I'm using yellow oxide and stamping more pattern on it. It just needed that little bit of gold. I kind of matched it to the flowers in there. It just needed a little something else. So yes, this would have been easier to do before I glued the birds down and the flowers, but I didn't know I needed to till now. So and this kind of made the background a little bit more cohesive. Before it just looked a little flat. It looked like it was missing something. I'm thinking I'm approaching the ending, which means I'm going to edge my page and I'm just shading it with my angle brush and black acrylic paint. This just kind of frames it. And you can see how it just makes the page. It really does frame it and you see it differently. It kind of stops your eye from floating off the page. Then I decided I'm going to add a little bit of shading on the stencil butter. So the news is you can paint over top of the stencil butters if you didn't know you could. I come back and I rub this mostly off because I liked it better without it. Personal choice. And you don't know unless you try. So I learned that I can paint over top of the stencil butters, but in this case, I didn't like the effect, or I liked it better without it. And now I'm shading around my birds. This is my focal image. I want them to stand out against the background a little bit more. My background, even though it's basically green, several tones of green, it's not overly busy, but I do want my focal image to stand out more. And I'm painting in where the branches ended. I'm just giving a little bit of shadow around the bird. And then I grab brown and I'm going to paint the branch in. Remember, I cut the bird off. It was a lot closer to the flower, and I altered the composition to make it fit my page. If I was doing this on a smaller page, like a 7 by 10, I may not have needed to do that. But this one is an 8.5 by 11. Now I'm grabbing reds, oranges, that Naples yellow, and I'm watering it down and over painting my flowers and the bird. I want to tweak those colors. I want them to be a little bit brighter than they are. Some of them looked a little bit faded to me. So I'm just taking a very little bit of paint. I've got a little bit of a round brush there, and I'm just painting. Now, I'm not worried about keeping it exactly the way it was, the exact colors and tones of what the napkin was. Nobody's going to see the napkin to compare. I just want it to look nice, and I'm just putting on paint. I'm not really thinking, here's the Naples yellow, and I've just matched colors that I have with what I see, or as close as I can get. And when you're working wet on wet, then the red kind of diffuses inside of the yellow, and you get that instant shading and multicolors of the flowers that make it also interesting. I think here I grabbed cadmium yellow. I just want a little bit brighter yellow for some of it. It looked a little bit duller. So mix and match. And that's the secret sometimes is mixing a couple yellows or a couple reds, wet and wet, and then you end up with some really wonderful tones. And I am putting water on my brush, so I am slightly watering down the acrylic paint. And just use my finger to smudge it. I'm just loving how that stencil butter shines up in the top right hand corner. It's like the sky opened up there. I'm just speeding up the video here and I'm just adding more color. And I'm just doing what looks or feels good. And then I'm adding the colors to the bird's body as well. I love the bright colors of this tropical themed page. And then I'm doing a little bit of shading on the flowers using some dark red, a little bit of black. Then I grab gold and I'm just brushing a little bit of gold on the flowers and on the birds. And I wish you could see how wonderful this looks in real life. It added so much interest and so much, to the page. Just another layer of interest. Love, love, love how this is looking. And I decided that I wanted to bring out those leaves. So I'm grabbing some black acrylic with my angle brush and I am shading around the leaves to define that shape. And again, this is adding more depth to it and made so much difference. I love the way this looked. When the idea came to me, I said, well, I don't know if this is going to work. Is it going to give me the effect? It darkened it, it deepened it, made it look more like more tropical, more, I don't know, just added so much. You like it, you go with it. And if you don't, well, then you learn. Just adding more shading here around the edge of the flowers. So you can see how that one 12 by 12 stencil really, I built a beautiful tropical background with all these other techniques going in. I grabbed my fine line applicator bottle. There's thinned black acrylic paint, just Liquitex Basics black acrylic paint that I've thinned down. I'm just outlining parts of my sentiment. And then I'm just adding black dots to the center of all these flowers. Now, the paint is a little bit dimensional, and that contrast just, again, it just brings these flowers to life. I love how this added to it. Now, could I have said, okay, I'm going to do this from the beginning and knew exactly all the steps that I did when I started this page? No. The only thing I knew is I wanted to use that napkin and I wanted to use that stencil. Everything else evolved as I worked the page. And I looked at it. Where am I now? What needs to happen now? Add a few black dots on the bird. And there we have the finished page. Let creativity take flight. I love this page. I hope you do too. Give me a thumbs up. Share this with your creative friends. Take a look at the close-ups. There's the stencil, the napkin. If you're interested in the prompt pack, go to NINNYSNAPKINS.com. There's a coupon code down below. Go and check it out. Until next time, go get creative.